Passover, every single person at the Seder table, the Seder meal, is required, and I wish this were true, and that they'd actually do it, is
Let's get really basic for a second. Um, for those out there who are at a very, very starter level, let's talk about what is kosher wine, how is it different from other wine, and then from what I understand, I don't want to say complicated, but there's several steps to the process. So can we just simplify it a little bit and summarize the details in the process of kosher wine and the process that makes it kosher? And is that the best way to even is that even the best way to ask that question?
It is the best way to ask that question. So first, let me take the myth out of what kosher wine is or isn't. When I'll stand in front of 100 people and do a seminar on kosher wines, one of the questions I'll ask is, how many people know what kosher wines is? And then a bunch of people will raise their hands, and I'll say, okay, what is it? And the answer most often quoted, oh, it's blessed by the rabbi. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. Unlike any other kosher product, most kosher foods are a matter of ingredients. So, for example, in cookies, as an example, non-kosher cookies could contain gelatin or animal-based oils and products. Kosher cookies cannot. Okay. Burgers or meats have to be killed in a certain way in order for them to be kosher. Fish can't contain any crusticans. So it's all ingredients based when it comes to kosher food. Kosher wine and non-kosher wine can and should be identical in what's in them and how they're made. Identical. The only difference between kosher wine and non-kosher wine is that from the crushing of the grape until the sealing of the bottle, it's overseen and handled by an observant crew, a rabbinically Jewish observant crew. And the reason for that, and this is the key, the reason for that goes back to the original question. Blessed by the rabbi. No, the rabbi is there to make sure that there's no blessing in the wine. Because millennia ago, wine was blessed by pagan ritual rites. And so the rabbi is there to make sure that the wine is neutral, that it's you, the consumer, that makes it special, that makes the Jewish blessing, or that it, enjoys it with your anniversary or your child's confirmation or whatever. So that when it comes to you, it's neutral. The rabbi's there to make sure that now, of course, those kinds of blessings don't take place anymore in the real world. But still, once Jewish theology says that once a rule is made, we don't break that rule. So from the crushing of the grape until the sealing of the bottle, wines are overseen and or handled by a rabbinical authority, a confirmed rabbinical authority. Now, having said that, over the last 100 years, and that's a very short time in the making of wine, there have been ingredients that are sometimes used in non-kosher wines that cannot be used in kosher wines. That doesn't mean they are always used. For example, gelatin is sometimes used as a fining agent to clarify wine. In kosher wine, we can't use that, never will. Most non-kosher wines don't use it either. But it can be used, and the rabbi's there also to ensure that that's not used. Isinglass, which is a kind of clarifying agent that may or may not be kosher, comes from a fish that may or may not be kosher, sometimes used. Sodium caseinate. Sodium caseinate is an acidifying agent that is sometimes used in making non-kosher wines. Very often never used, or often never used, but that comes from a dairy byproduct, casein. So even though it's kosher, it might render the wine not usable when you're having a meat meal, So all those extra additives, preservatives, agents, etc., that may be used in non-kosher wines can never be used in kosher wines. So those are really the two differences. One, just to
Sure.
encapsulate,
Sure.
is that from the crushing of the grape until the sealing of the bottle, there's a rabbinical crew there to make sure that no blessing goes into the wine, and two, that no foreign substances that are not kosher physically
Mhm.
can be used in the processing of the wine. There is one also nuance. It's called mivushal, which is flash pasteurization today,
Okay.
which allows the wine to be handled by anybody who's not observant, whether it be Jewish or Gentile, and the wine retains its kosher certification. And that's a very long Talmudic discussion as to why that works that way. If you have an hour, I'm glad to share that with you. But suffice it to say that most wines today many wines go through this, kosher wines go through this mevushal process, this flash pasteurization process, and so therefore can be handled in a public setting by observant and non-observant people alike, Jews and non-Jews alike, and still retain its kosher certification. And by the way, an interesting thing about, I hope stop me if I'm getting too long-winded, but an interesting thing about the mevushal process, the flash pasteurization process, is now many non-kosher wineries are using this process under a process called flash détente,
Mhm.
which actually enhances the wine. Wine is still not kosher because there's no rabbinical crew watching it, which is the most important thing, but it enhances the wine by getting better extract out of what we call phenolics. Phenolics is the skins and the seeds, and if you can get better extract, the wine can be often richer, more colorful, etc. So Beaucastel, for example, which is a great southern France, very expensive wine, uses a similar process on all of their wines, even though the wine's not kosher because there's no rabbinical proof from the beginning, from the crushing to the sealing. But some people have said that this flash pasteurization is not good for the wine. Well, guess what? There are a lot of French producers and now California producers that are using this process in just plain old winemaking.
A very big special thank you to Vrbo. With over 2 million bookable vacation rentals, Vrbo connects homeowners with families and vacationers looking for something more than a hotel for their trip. The Vrbo community offers families an array of rental property types such as condos, cabins, lake rentals, beach houses, and more. Discover properties and destinations that everyone dreams of visiting. Vrbo, where families travel better together. Find more information at vrbo.com. That's VRBO.com. Okay, back to the show.